Have you been injured in a car accident? Have you been turned down for Social Security benefits or workman's comp? Then you need to know your rights.
Hi, my name is Adam, and today I'm talking with Esther Sanders from Sanders & Associates Law Office. Esther, tell us a little bit about the practice, about yourself, and how long you've been around.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, I'm Esther Sanders with Sanders & Associates Law Office. We're in downtown Tulsa at 1015 South Detroit. We've had our own practice here in Tulsa since January of 1995, doing personal injury, workers' comp, and Social Security disability.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and talk about personal injury. Why should someone call an attorney when they get in an accident?
Well, the most important thing is to know your rights. You know, you are going to be talking to the other side. You're not trained to do that. The other side has lots of hours and training on how to handle you and your case, but their obligation is not to you. It's their own insured that their obligation is to. So it's really important that you just call, find out what your rights are, and you can find out at that time then if you're going to need representation or not and what the steps are.
Let's kind of talk about something you just said. After we've settled up and we've gone through all the medical procedures and been checked out and released, and we contacted the insurance company, should we settle immediately or should we reach out, and what does that look like?
Well, you know, the important thing is what you just indicated. You should complete your medical treatment before you attempt to settle. The insurance company is going to contact you right away, and most usually they're going to want you to settle right away. They're going to try to get closure to that file so that their insurer doesn't have exposure for perhaps the full extent of your injuries. But no, you shouldn't try to settle right away. Even if you've been released from medical care, oftentimes it's a temporary, you know, position where you're in and you're not fully recovered yet. So it's important to know what the full extent of your damages are and your injuries and whether you've fully recovered or not. Because once you settle and you sign that release, your case is closed forever and you can't come back and ask for any additional benefits of any type.
Okay. Another concern I know I've had personally after being in an accident that was not my fault, will my insurance go up?
That's certainly a big concern for everybody because, you know, as we all know, we pay a lot for insurance already. And so there's a law that says in the state of Oklahoma that they cannot raise your rates, cancel your policy, or refuse to renew your policy when you've been in a wreck and you use benefits that are available to you and you were not at fault.
Okay. And if you're just now joining us, my name is Adam, and we're talking about knowing our rights. And I'm visiting with Esther Sanders from Sanders & Associates Law Office. We're talking a little bit about personal injury and what that looks like and why we should call an attorney if we've been in an accident. So, you know, we see all these commercials and things on TV with these big $1 million lawsuits. Is that realistic? Does that happen? Like, walk us through or talk about cases and how people can go to court and recover all their fees and what they're due.
Sure. You know, some cases are worth more than $1 million and some cases are worth less. Mm-hmm. There's a wide range and every case is different. And so, you know, most people don't have any experience, or if they have experience, it's very little in dealing with what happens when you have an injury and what is the value of that. And that's what we do every day. And so, you know, it's important to find out from someone who knows what a case is worth or how they're handled. And, you know, as far as it being what you said, you see on TV. And I think that a lot of times what happens in those is that the people behind, the rest of us don't know what happened in that case and what the full extent of those injuries and damages are. And so you need someone on your side who can help you determine those things.
Sometimes when people get injured, you go to a doctor. You may not be happy with the care or that doctor. Am I allowed to go to another doctor? Will all my doctor bills be paid? You know, that's a lot of stress that people take on. So if someone has been injured and they don't like the care they received, can they go see another physician? And then, as you know, the medical bills pile and pile up. Walk us through that.
Thank you. Yes, the medical bills do pile up. And when you've been involved in a trucking wreck or a motorcycle wreck, The important thing is that you go get the medical care that you need. You have a right to choose your own medical care. So go get treated just like you would, regardless of whose fault it is. And in the meantime, there's different things as a law firm that we can do to help put off those bill collectors or help them understand that they need to wait for payment until completion of the case. Not all medical providers are willing to wait, but oftentimes they will. And so, as a lawyer, we sometimes can help you with, at least having breathing room with those medical bills.
Okay, yeah. And so I know with that, some people, might be concerned that they'll be labeled a gold digger or, just have some negative connotation to it. But by reaching out to attorney, is that something that people are apprehensive about because of the stigma that comes with that?
Oftentimes people are apprehensive about calling in a lawyer, and there's no doubt a number of different reasons, and that probably is one of them. But everybody who calls here is calling for the same reason. They have a legal problem and they need help, and so not all of them are asking for money even. And so the best thing to do is to call and see, and we answer calls all day long. Just, do you have a case and how can we help you, or do you not have a case but this is why?
Yeah.
Information gathering.
So we've talked about what to do when you've been in a wreck at first, and who you're going to talk to, and is there any cases that are too big or too small?
Well, no, and a lot of times you don't necessarily know whether you may know that they have big damages, but you don't know whether there's going to be any money available to cover those damages, or you may initially think that it's not going to be big damages, and then later it does develop into something. So we at Sanders Law Office do our very best to treat each case as an individual and provide them with the knowledge that we would the next person, and treat them all the same as we would if it was our friends or our family.
So I know I've seen in the story or in the news stories after stories about uninsured motorists, and they get in a wreck and kill two people, or someone gets seriously injured or maimed. How does that work? Because Oklahoma has a pretty strict law on uninsured motorists.
We have laws in Oklahoma that says that you have to have insurance coverage for liability, which means the minimum limits is 25, 50, 25. The first 25 is the maximum amount that policy will pay for an individual who's injured in the wreck and they were not at fault. $50,000 though would then become the maximum amount total for everybody injured who is not the at-fault driver. So $50,000 can go away real fast.
Real fast.
And then the last number would be for property damage where they've caused injury or
Damage to the
damage
car.
to someone else's. Yeah. Now coverage is a whole nother matter, and that's something that you purchase yourself. I tell everyone, purchase as much as you can. You can only get as much as your liability coverage that you purchase.
Oh.
So coverage would be if the other party who's at fault didn't have enough coverage or didn't have any coverage, then your coverage is there and available for your damages, not your property damage, but lost wages, pain and suffering, medical bills, and that kind of thing.
Okay, so if someone does not have uninsured motorist coverage and they get in an accident by someone with no coverage, is there still hopes to recover that case?
Well, yes. And
Okay.
so, first off, everyone needs to understand that anytime you're in a wreck, whether it's your fault or not, your insurance policy requires that you notify your insurance company of that wreck. And one of the reasons, no doubt, is because if you have coverage or you have MedPay or other benefits that may be available in your policy, your insurance company has an obligation, they have a duty to tell you about those coverages and how you can use those.
And we've talked a lot about automobile wrecks and things like that. You had said earlier that you also work with truck driver accidents and motorcycle wrecks. You want to talk a little bit about that and what that entails?
Sure. When you're dealing with a trucking company, there's a lot that you do differently. And one of the things you'd be surprised, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still thankful that I have clients that come in and say, I want to make sure that this doesn't happen to someone else. And so we're looking in, say, a trucking wreck, we're looking to see if that company has a policy of not taking care of their trucks or not vetting their drivers, and they're putting unsafe vehicles or drivers out on the highway. And if that's the case, then we want to do our best to make sure that they don't continue that practice.
Sure.
And in regard to motorcycle wrecks, being a rider and having represented riders for many, many years, we know that at least in the past, and maybe it's better, but at least in the past, a lot of people felt like if you were on a motorcycle, if you were riding a motorcycle, then probably, you should have known better, or something to that effect. And so we know that that's not the case, and we know that those injuries are oftentimes much more significant simply because of the aspect of the impact, and we will do everything we can to help those people.
So talk about the lawsuit. Does the consumer or the person that's been injured, do they have to go to court, or do you guys go on behalf for them? Or, tell us about that.
Well, that's a great case because there is, I think, a big misunderstanding about what is required from the individual, and some people totally understand they have to be very involved in the case also, and then some people would rather not have to be so involved. They want to just get on with their life and be able to do the things that they do every day, and they can't really fit in another demand in their life. But we work closely with the clients in order to be able to better represent them. And then the clients, if we can't settle like a car wreck case, if you can't settle that outside of having to file a lawsuit, then you do file a lawsuit, and the client oftentimes will have to testify in court. And, it's very scary. And so we will sit down and meet with the client and go over all those things, the could-be's and the would-be's, and let them then make a decision, an informed decision about what they feel is best for them under the circumstances.
I called Esther Sanders when I had an accident. I was in a car accident. It wasn't my fault. I was just sitting and somebody rear-ended me and hit me into the car in front of me, but it totally destroyed my car. And I was in the hospital, and the bills started coming in, and so what do you do, And so I'd known Esther for a long time, and so I called her up and told her about it, and she said, "Get in here, we need to talk." And she just took care of everything. My bills were coming in, and she would call people and say, here's the situation, and she just took care of it. And anytime I would have a question, I'd call, and she would get on the phone with me, and there was never a time when I didn't know what was going on with my case. And she took the time to talk to me about it and tell me my best options. And I highly recommend anybody to go to Sanders and Associates. If you have a car accident, you need to call right away and find out what your rights are, and to find out if they can help you and make it easy transition for you, so you're not out your time and money. And when you're not working, that's a loss to you. So she was able to help me out with that as well. So I definitely recommend anybody calling Sanders and Associates and talking to Esther.
Hi, welcome back. My name is Adam, and I'm visiting with Esther Sanders from Sanders Law Office. And we were talking about personal injury, and we're going to get into another aspect of law that they practice here, and that's Social Security. And if you're just now joining us, Sanders has been practicing since 1995 here in Tulsa.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I've been practicing a little longer than that, but I've had my own practice since '95.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So let's talk about Social Security and disability.
Sure.
For everyone watching, we've all heard that. What is it?
Sure. Okay, so Social Security disability, and when I say Social Security disability, I mean Social Security disability because there's also SSI, which is Supplemental Security Income, which is also a disability, and you apply through the same agency. So Social Security disability is something that we pay for. It comes out of our check every pay period, and so it's like buying insurance, but it's disability insurance through the state or federal. And so there's Social Security disability, insurance, and then also available in that same kind of idea is widows benefits. If the widow or widower becomes disabled after their spouse passes, or a disabled adult child, and then supplemental security income. And so supplemental security income is needs-based as opposed to something that you've paid in for. But all of those benefits are available to an individual who's disabled under Social Security's rules. And so that may mean they're blind, they've got a combination of problems that makes them unable to work, or they had a specific injury that now prevents them from working, or perhaps they were born or later developed a disability that prevents them from being able to work in what they call a substantial gainful activity.
Okay. So why would someone contact Sanders Law Office for Social Security disability? What's a trigger that causes someone to have an attorney?
Well, once you file for your benefits, you can go to Social Security Administration's office, and they'll assist you with the filing of it. And then if you get denied, which obviously a lot of people get denied, then call us and we'll talk to you about whether what the problem is. Why are they not finding you disabled? Perhaps there's a reason. Maybe they didn't get all your medical records, or maybe there's some other problems in your case. And so we will assist you with that appeals process. Once you've been denied, you have 60 days, technically 65 days, to file your appeal. And so we help you through that process. And then if it needs to go to trial, we'll go try it also.
Okay, so I guess who qualifies for that? Anyone that's been hurt or disabled, or,
And that's a great question. And that's why if you have those kinds of questions, give us a call. But it may be, certainly if you've worked and you're not able to work any longer, or you're having to have assistance through your employer, and if it wasn't for your employer working with you and helping you, you wouldn't be able to keep the job or a job. There's a lot of different things. And so oftentimes people call us well in advance of their need to file even, just to ask those kinds of questions. What makes me qualified for disability benefits? And so, but the primary thing is unable to work.
Okay.
I was involved in an auto accident, and Esther, I've worked with her previously. She does everything by the book, very pleasant to work with, and I referred my family, friends, co-workers to her, and I've referred several of her clients to her, and they were very satisfied with her service. Esther Sanders is very personal. She's like family. When you come into her office, her staff is very friendly, and when you walk in the door, I mean, you can't go any place where the workers are as friendly as Esther Sanders and Associates.
We've talked about personal injury. We've talked about Social Security disability. Now we're going to talk about workers' comp. So Esther, tell us about workers' comp. What is it? What does it look like? And just kind of go from there.
Thank you, Adam. So workers' comp, let's just start with the idea that in February 1st, 2014, everything changed. Now we have two systems. We have a court system and a commission. So first thing a person has to do is determine where their claim is supposed to be. So when a person gets injured on the job, there's essentially two types of injuries. There's an accumulative trauma injury. That's something that occurs over a period of time. So they perhaps, are doing repetitive work. They have injuries to their shoulders or their arms or their hands. It could be any part of the body, hearing loss from exposure to noise over a period of time. So then you have to determine, when did I start having problems with those things? Or was it a specific injury? And if so, then what date did that occur? Workers' comp is quite complicated. And so the first thing that you should do if you believe that you've been injured on the job is go ahead and call a lawyer and ask some questions about it.
Okay. I know a lot of people are fearful of losing their job if they file a workman's comp case. What does that look like?
Well, it's a real fear, and it does happen. And the law says that they're not supposed to be terminated or treated differently for filing a workers' compensation claim. Reality is that yes, sometimes it does happen. But if you have filed your claim and you're represented by an attorney, then those things can be documented better. You can get some feedback from your attorney on how to handle those things as it's happening. Unfortunately, I can't sit here and tell you that no employer is going to fire someone for filing a work comp claim. I can tell you that they're not supposed to.
Okay. Does it, you said the first thing people should do is call an attorney. Here at Sanders Law Office, does it cost when someone calls in for advice?
It does not cost, and we're happy to visit, happy to kind of figure out where their claim lies, whether it's old court, new court, is it a cumulative trauma, specific injury? Because what happens sometimes is, the longer they work, the more problems they start having. And now this is hurting when I picked up this, or it's hurting when I picked up that. But it was all created when they were doing this repetitive type work.
I've heard it takes some time to get the workers' comp cases going. Is that true?
It is true. For a person who just got hurt on the job, maybe they're off work now because of it. And, most of us live at least somewhat paycheck to paycheck. And so, it could take months before you get to trial, before your benefits get started. Sadly, they've taken a lot of steps to try to speed up that process, but it's still, it's not unheard of by any means that people lose, so much that they work so hard for because their benefits are not getting started promptly.
Is that just a call as soon as they suspect they've been injured, or, because I'm sure every case is so different.
When they call, if they don't need an attorney right away, we're going to tell them that. I mean, if it's something that they seem to be handling just fine, maybe they're getting a little bit of treatment, or maybe they don't even need treatment yet, but maybe they just need to notify their employer that they're having problems. So, it doesn't hurt to call and find out what their rights are. Do they have to do that right away? No, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a case just because they're calling. So, I'd rather they call and get some information. Everybody is in a better position when they have some knowledge about what their situation is. And so with knowledge comes a better position.
Right. So Esther, workers' comp seems to be so intricate and just kind of confusing. What's the biggest problem with workers' comp cases?
Well, there's a lot of problems with the work comp. Oklahoma is not at the top of as far as providing benefits for their workers, and it's not uncommon for a person to go through the process and not be able to return to the job that they were doing before. They have permanent restrictions that prevent them from doing that work. Maybe they can be retrained, and the system does provide for retraining, or maybe they never can work again. And unfortunately, sadly, some people lose their lives through this process while they're at work, or complications thereafter. And so there are benefits available to the family. But it's pretty devastating to watch people day after day after day just struggling to get their paycheck each week, which is 70% of their average weekly wage, and just being able to scrape by making ends meet. And then once they're on their workers' comp, whatever their rate is at that time, it never goes up. So if we can help them from the get-go, it's not uncommon for claims to be denied. And I think one of the big things that is a misconception for people in workers' comp is, like so many, they come in and they don't realize that they may have to go to trial several times. Everything that a doctor wants to do, if the other side doesn't approve it, we have to go to trial and ask for it to be approved. And so workers' comp is something that, you know, the system does drag on and on and on. We have cases here. I have, you know, they're family now. I have clients who have been around since '96. So, but the benefits under workers' comp, some of it's because they're going to need that treatment forever. So, the work comp case, it's typically not going to be closed or brought to an inactive status until they've completed their medical care. So medical care is a big factor when dealing with the work comp, and when the other side's not authorizing treatment at all, or maybe they are a little bit here and there, but you have to fight for everything sometimes. I think the first thing that you got to look at is, do they need medical care? If they don't need medical care, then there's no point in bringing a claim. Without medical care, there's no benefits that's going to be paid. But if medical care is needed, then by all means, you notify your employer. You need to let them know right away. One of the biggest factors in denying a claim, it's not uncommon for an employer to say that they were never notified. So my best advice in that regard is to do it in writing. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. So workers' comp, is there a settlement at the end after all these trials? I mean, you said it could take a long time, but typically, what's that look like?
So every case is different. Sometimes there's a settlement. Sometimes we go to trial for permanent disability and let the judge decide. You know, a lot of times the parties do reach an agreement on how to resolve that, but you know, the best thing to do is to, you know, call a lawyer, and it can be a very long process, and there's a lot of different things that you have to take into consideration. For instance, are they on Social Security disability? Are they a Medicare recipient? Do they receive Medicaid? And so there's a lot of different reasons that at that point, for sure, they need to talk to a lawyer.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in to Know Your Rights with Esther Sanders. If you have any questions, please contact the number on the screen below or visit sanderslawoffice.com. So, Esther, before we leave, how do people contact you, and what should they do in a personal injury case, Social Security disability, or a workers' comp case, or if they just have another legal question?
The best way is to call us at 918-745-2000. They can email us, you know, go to our website, www.sanderslawoffice.com, and they can email us from there. Schedule an appointment to come in and talk to us. But regardless of what, even if it's not one of those areas, we would be happy to take their call and either give them some direction or perhaps direct them to someone that can help them. There's no harm in making the call.
Okay.
Have you been injured in a car accident? Have you been turned down for Social Security benefits or workman's comp? Then you need to know your rights.